Mara Gay, there's talk that maybe Democrats want to see more Trump out there, show him for what he is, as opposed to the last time around where I think a lot of media organizations especially were criticized for carrying his speeches live, taking him on interviews all the time. We did it for sure. We invited other candidates to do the same. Maybe it is different this time because he shows himself and we have seen the impact of his actions.
That's right. There was somebody who, in our coverage in the New York Times about this phenomenon, likened it, I loved the quote, likened the dynamic of Americans not really remembering how terrible Trump was as president to a bad relationship, where kind of the more distance that you get, exactly, a toxic relationship, the more distance you get from it, the more you kind of forget how terrible and toxic it was. And so her idea was, well, we need to remind Americans of that. I think there's been so much discussion about Joe Biden's numbers, the president's numbers, understandably being really underwater, that, the reality is that the Republican Party has reason to fear Donald Trump as the nominee because he has been a loser for them at this point since 2020.
Yeah.
And they know that.
Joe.
Well, yeah, they certainly know that. I mean, and please find me a president that has Joe Biden's record, not only in an off-year election, but in off-year elections. He won in 20, his party won 20, won in 21, won in 22, won in 23. Something obviously Donald Trump didn't do. His party lost every year he was president. Certainly not something that Barack Obama did. His party faced just disaster in both of his off-year elections. Certainly not something that George W. Bush did. The House turned over to Nancy Pelosi in 2006. You can go all the way back. Reagan had horrible midterm. All these political giants, LBJ, not Joe Biden. Not Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden won in 20. Joe Biden's party won in 21. Joe Biden's party won in 22, and Joe Biden's party won in 23. And Lauren Leader, all of this is a really, really big windup to say that Donald Trump is toxic. As the New York Times reporting says today, he is a one-man get-out-the-vote machine, political operation for Democrats. And especially, and I want you to speak to this especially, these polls showing that young voters are going to vote for Donald Trump really do make me laugh out loud, because this time next year, young voters across America are going to hear Donald Trump hundreds and hundreds of times in the last few weeks of the campaign saying he's the guy that, quote, terminated Roe v. Wade. He's the guy that forced 10-year-old girls who were raped by illegal immigrants to flee the state. He's the guy. He's the guy that took the freedom from women away to make choices over their lives that they've had for half a century.
I mean, it's diminishing returns. It's been diminishing returns for Trump since he was elected. And I think, that's been pretty consistent. But, the media question is a really interesting one, because I do think there is this case that the Democrats want to continue prosecuting. It's been actually a very successful strategy to be running against Trump in these last cycles, because he is so galvanizing in terms of the sort of backlash vote. But there's another side of it, which also affects the Republican primaries, which is this outsized coverage that he gets relative to the other candidates. And I'll come back to share with you some more. We've been looking at Nikki Haley and, how much fair coverage she's getting in the context of this. So there is evidence that the more times a candidate's name is mentioned in the media, that it does benefit them. So, it's a delicate balance, right? How much does his constant coverage just keep him constantly as this sort of front of mind for the voters versus the reality, which is that he has repealed abortion rights, that he is repellent to women in the suburbs. He is repellent to communities of minority Americans.
And apparently repellent to winning.
And apparently repellent to winning. I mean, it's really remarkable. I think the Democrats have historically been very successful running against him. It's a more complicated picture this time when it comes to the media.
Yeah, I feel like for some, Trump Republicans who believe they love it when nothing's going to change.
Nothing's going to change.
But for maybe some moderates or for those who are on the fence, seeing him might be exhausting. I
Yeah.
would be just exhausted by it.
That's what the Biden campaign has been betting on since day one.
Yeah.
The people are just fed up with it, and when they get into
Circus.
the voting booth, and it's a binary choice between Trump or Biden, those independent swing voters who so often decide
It's going to get us
elections,
to the future.
right, will not check Donald Trump's name. Mara, to Joe's point, though, about the young voters, and I'm with him, these young voters are not going to break for Trump.
No.
The risk, though, is they could stay home.
Right.
That they
right.
not be motivated to come out to vote for Biden, and Biden needs those votes. How do you see that landscape?
I think it's a real danger sign for Joe Biden. Those voters are not going to vote for Donald Trump. But I think, even as the president has a lot to be proud of, especially today with the pressure that the White House helped implement to get these hostages home, which is great. And we just pray that that all goes smoothly. There are a lot of Americans, young people, minorities who are at home saying, what has he delivered for the base here? And that is actually the conversation that's going on at a lot of, Thanksgiving dinner tables. You have a lot of young people who are deeply in debt with student loans. There's affirmative action has been overturned, Roe v. Wade. So there's a lot actually that young people are angry about. They can't afford the cost of housing. And, inflation has hit them hard too because they're not earning even what their parents did. Yeah. So I think that the president's got to give them a reason to turn out. And even if that's just to say, we're going to do more in the next term, there's got to be something other than I'm not Donald Trump, because young people may not wait in line and go out and vote, especially in states. You have to think about the state like Georgia. It may not necessarily be easy for people to vote. You're talking about inner cities. The wait times can be very long. It shouldn't be that way. So he's got to do more than just count on Donald Trump as the boogeyman.
Joe.
Yeah, and Mara brings up such a great point. The danger is twofold. It's one, that these voters, young voters, just like the Republican voters in the suburb, just like progressive voters, just like people of color, stay home. That's the danger for both sides. I also want to say, though, that we do talk when we speak of younger voters, and it's clueless in a sense. We talk about just social issues. Reminds me of when the log cabin Republicans started up, and even I was going, "Oh, come on, what's this? Come on, the log cabin. There are no gay people who are Republicans. Like this back in the 1990s, right? Just like, Hispanics only care about immigration issues, or what young people only care about." No, it is the mistake both parties make. And I must say, Democrats, Maura, are more prone to making this mistake, thinking gay voters only care about gay issues. They don't have a life. They don't have a job. They don't pay taxes. They aren't part of the economy. They don't care about inflation. No, that's obviously not true. Democrats got that wrong. They've gotten Hispanic voters wrong in that it turns out that Hispanic voters, they care about the economy. They care about small business. They care about et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's the same thing with young voters. And I can't emphasize what you've said enough about this economy. This economy disproportionately hurts Americans, I think, under 35, under 40, who can't afford their first home, who really can't afford to live the type of life that their parents lived, who see themselves falling further and further behind every single week. And they hear us talking about how great the economy is. And what I hear an awful lot, and I know you hear an awful lot, I hear younger Americans saying, I'm not seeing that. I can't even afford to rent a house, let alone buy one.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I would put myself in that category, honestly. It's very difficult. And I would also just say that, the lack of real competition in American democracy at this point is a problem. Because, if those voters are looking at their choices as either Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and that's what the choices seem to be at the moment, the option is clear, but they're being asked to swallow a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so there's no real alternative that's saying, hey, I will attend to your needs, because the Democratic Party has essentially, I believe, for many years now, and this is not a new phenomenon, it has taken the votes for granted of both Black people, people of color in general, and young people. That hasn't changed. And as these numbers really start to deteriorate for Joe Biden, you would hope that there would be more tension there.
Mara Gay, Lauren Leader, thank you both very much for being on this morning.